The wedding was meant to be the happiest day of Isabella's life, until a dark secret tore it all apart. Hours before she was supposed to walk down the aisle, Isabella vanished, leaving behind only a blood-stained veil and a chilling note. What happened in the shadows of the vineyard? Who would kill the bride on her wedding day? Stay with me as we unravel the horrifying truth behind Isabella's murder, a secret that no one saw coming. Isabella and Daniel appeared to be the epitome of perfection. Their love story was one that people told with a smile. Two young dreamers who had found each other and built a life full of promise. Isabella's radiant beauty and artistic charm complemented Daniel's sharp wit and professional ambition. Together, they seemed unstoppable. But behind the carefully curated social media posts and public displays of affection, something sinister lurked. In the months leading up to the wedding, Isabella began noticing changes in Daniel that left her restless at night. He often worked late, his excuses vague and unconvincing. His phone, once casually left on the counter, was now password protected and never out of his reach. She dismissed these signs, convincing herself that the stress of wedding planning was taking its toll on both of them. But deep inside, a nagging unease whispered to her, a voice she tried to silence. One evening, while sorting through wedding plans, Isabella stumbled upon a receipt crumpled in Daniel's jacket pocket. It was for an expensive dinner at a restaurant she had never been to, dated on a night Daniel claimed to be working late. Her heart raced as she stared at the slip of paper, feeling like she had uncovered the corner of a secret too terrifying to confront. That night, as Daniel slept beside her, Isabella unlocked his phone, her hands trembling. A series of messages flashed on the screen, cryptic, affectionate exchanges with an unknown number. A sense of dread enveloped her, yet she couldn't tear herself away. Something wasn't right. What she had uncovered wasn't just infidelity. It felt like the prelude to something darker. What Daniel was hiding went far beyond broken vows. It was a secret that would make her question everything she thought she knew. On the day of the wedding, the vineyard was alive with anticipation. The soft hum of classical music played as florists added final touches to cascading floral arrangements. The air was filled with laughter, champagne toasts, and the scent of blooming roses. Isabella's guests, dressed in their finest, admired the picturesque setting, a perfect stage for what was meant to be a storybook wedding. But as the hours crept closer to the ceremony, a chilling unease began to creep through the crowd. Isabella was missing. Initially, her absence was brushed off as bridal nerves. "It's normal," someone whispered. "She'll make a dramatic entrance any moment." Daniel paced near the altar, his expression a mask of worry and irritation. The wedding coordinator assured everyone that things were fine, but her voice trembled as she made frantic phone calls. When 30 minutes turned into an hour, tension thickened like the heavy storm clouds rolling in overhead. A bridesmaid checked the bridal suite, finding it eerily untouched. Isabella's gown hung perfectly pressed, her bouquet lay abandoned on the table. Her phone buzzed with unanswered texts, but she was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped the vineyard as Daniel joined the search. Friends combed through the property, calling Isabella's name, their voices echoing against the vast, empty fields. The once celebratory atmosphere dissolved into confusion and fear. By late afternoon, guests began to murmur. Was she a runaway bride? Had she been taken? Each passing second birthed darker theories. The idyllic vineyard, once a place of joy, became a sprawling scene of dread. What none of them knew was that Isabella's disappearance wasn't a twist of fate or a moment of hesitation. Something sinister had already occurred, leaving only questions and a haunting silence in her place. As the frantic search for Isabella continued, a groundskeeper stumbled upon something that froze him in place. Near a secluded trail on the vineyard's outskirts, he found a delicate lace veil, stained with smears of dirt. A few steps away, partially buried in the soil, was a blood-stained piece of paper. The vibrant red against the soft parchment was a stark, horrifying contrast. The discovery transformed the search into something much darker. A desperate hunt for answers about what had truly happened to Isabella. The note was rushed to the authorities, who quickly determined it was no ordinary scrap. It was a handwritten confession, raw and riddled with emotion. The words revealed a torrid affair between Daniel and Lydia, Isabella's maid of honor. The affair had begun over a year ago, concealed under the guise of late-night meetings and weekend getaways under the pretense of work. Worse, the note implied that Lydia had been more than a confidant. She had actively encouraged Daniel to end his engagement. The most chilling revelation was buried in the final lines of the note. Isabella had discovered their betrayal weeks earlier, but had kept her silence, carefully plotting to expose them both. She planned to reveal the affair during her vows, a public reckoning that would humiliate Daniel and Lydia in front of their friends and family. The veil and the blood on the paper suggested something had gone terribly wrong before Isabella could carry out her plan. As the vineyard buzzed with news of the discovery, Daniel's carefully constructed facade began to crack. He grew defensive, snapping at those around him and stumbling through his explanations. Lydia, once composed and radiant, now appeared fraught with anxiety, her hands trembling as whispers swirled. Police began piecing together the fragments of evidence, but one question loomed. If Isabella had planned to confront them, what had stopped her? The blood, the trail, the missing bride, it all painted a picture of a confrontation that spiraled into violence. The vineyard, once brimming with joy and promise, now stood as the backdrop of a dark secret coming to light. And somewhere in its shadows lay the truth, a truth Daniel and Lydia seemed desperate to hide. The discovery of Isabella's blood-stained note marked the turning point in what was initially believed to be a case of cold feet. The vineyard, once filled with guests eager to celebrate love, had become the epicenter of a chilling mystery. Investigators arrived in force, cordoning off the area where the note and veil were found. It was no longer a search for a missing bride. It was now a potential crime scene. Detectives began by questioning Daniel and Lydia, whose behavior raised immediate suspicions. Daniel, once the composed and charming groom-to-be, had grown agitated and defensive. He insisted he had no idea where Isabella was, claiming that their relationship had been perfect until the very morning of the wedding. But when pressed about the note, his responses became evasive. Lydia, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. She admitted to the affair under pressure, but her attempts to distance herself from any wrongdoing only deepened the investigators' scrutiny. As authorities combed through the vineyard, they uncovered crucial pieces of evidence. Surveillance footage from the property showed Daniel and Isabella walking toward the secluded trail hours before the ceremony. The footage captured an intense argument, Isabella gesturing emphatically, while Daniel loomed over her, his body language aggressive. This was the last time Isabella was seen alive. Forensic analysis of the blood on the note confirmed it was Isabella's. Near the trail, detectives found signs of a struggle. Disturbed soil, broken twigs, and faint drag marks leading further into the woods. A hair clip belonging to Isabella lay nearby, its delicate design smeared with dirt. The digital investigation yielded even more damning evidence. Text messages retrieved from Daniel's phone revealed a heated exchange between him and Lydia the night before the wedding. They discussed Isabella's knowledge of the affair and expressed fear about the fallout if she revealed their secret. One message from Daniel stood out. "She'll ruin everything. I won't let that happen." The case against Daniel mounted rapidly. His financial records showed he had recently taken out a significant life insurance policy on Isabella, a decision he couldn't convincingly explain. Witnesses came forward with accounts of Daniel's volatile temper, painting a picture of a man who valued his reputation above all else. Lydia, though not directly implicated in Isabella's disappearance, faced her own set of inquiries. Investigators suspected she might have known more than she let on. Her proximity to the crime and her role in the affair made her a person of interest. Yet, she clung to her story, portraying herself as a victim of Daniel's manipulation. The vineyard, now under heavy surveillance, yielded one final clue. A bloodied piece of fabric matching Isabella's wedding dress, found deep within the woods. The evidence pointed to an undeniable conclusion. Isabella's confrontation with Daniel had turned violent, ending in tragedy. With each revelation, the picture became clearer. Daniel's web of lies unraveled, exposing the lengths he would go to protect his image. But even as the evidence piled up, one haunting question remained. Where was Isabella's body? As the investigation into Isabella's disappearance continued to unfold, the weight of the evidence against Daniel became undeniable. It was clear that Isabella's tragic fate had been sealed long before she stepped foot into the vineyard on her wedding day. The chilling trail of clues, from the blood-stained note to the surveillance footage of her argument with Daniel, painted a picture of a premeditated crime. But what was still missing was Isabella herself. Her body, her final moments, and any answers that could give her family the closure they desperately needed. Daniel's arrest was inevitable. As detectives continued to piece together his web of lies, it became apparent that his perfect life was a facade built on manipulation and deceit. He was charged with Isabella's murder, and his trial began to garner significant media attention. The courtroom was filled with stunned family members, friends, and reporters, all awaiting answers to the questions that had plagued the investigation. How could a man so seemingly perfect be capable of such violence? What pushed him to kill the woman he had promised to love and cherish? The trial exposed the extent of Daniel's dark side. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, he had grown increasingly obsessed with maintaining his image. Isabella's discovery of the affair had shattered his carefully constructed life. When he realized she was planning to confront him publicly at the altar, his worst fears materialized. The thought of his secret being exposed was more than he could bear. It was in that moment of desperation, when he saw his entire future crumbling, that he made the decision to silence Isabella forever. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, presenting Daniel's history of manipulation, his financial motives, and the cold, calculated way he had planned the murder. Witnesses testified about his increasingly erratic behavior in the days leading up to the wedding. His alibi, shaky from the start, crumbled under scrutiny. The text messages between him and Lydia were read aloud in court, revealing his desperate desire to prevent Isabella from ruining everything. It was clear Isabella had been a threat to Daniel's image, and in his mind, she had to be silenced. But the most haunting part of the trial was the revelation of what happened in the woods that day. The blood on Isabella's veil, the marks of a violent struggle. This was no spur-of-the-moment crime. It was a deliberate act of brutality, a tragic end to a woman who had once been full of love and hope. Isabella had fought for her life, but in the end, Daniel overpowered her. Her body was found 2 days later, buried in a shallow grave near the edge of the vineyard. The authorities had been right to suspect that he had hidden her in a final attempt to cover up his crime. The verdict came swiftly. Daniel was found guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lydia, though not directly involved in Isabella's murder, faced charges of conspiracy to obstruct justice for her role in the affair and her attempts to help Daniel cover up his crime. For Isabella's family, the trial was bittersweet. While they had finally learned the truth, the pain of losing her in such a violent way would never go away. The wedding that was supposed to celebrate her love had instead become the backdrop of her tragic death. As the years passed, the memory of Isabella Moore haunted the small town, a reminder of how a secret, once buried, can grow into a monster. Daniel's perfect life had unraveled, leaving only the shattered remnants of a woman's life destroyed by betrayal. Isabella's story ended in tragedy, but her legacy lived on, serving as a reminder that some secrets are too dark to keep, and some lies cost more than anyone could ever imagine.